How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing awesome. Appreciate your time as always. Let's just start with the local angle here with LSU. You've got them as the 4 seed in the Midwest. What went into putting LSU on that 4 line?
Well, I had them on the 5 line, and they were kind of hanging around there, and then this weekend happened. There was a lot of upsets, a lot of movement, and I just felt that LSU was right and deserved to be on the 4 line. They're knocking on the door for the 3 line. I'm not ready to bump them up that far just yet.
What would it take?
They got some games coming up that could be kind of tricky. Win at Auburn sure would help. Maybe only lose a couple more. The top 3 lines are very solid teams. Not that they're that much better, but their resumes are that much better. I think LSU would need that win against Auburn, probably Kentucky as well, and don't lose to any teams that you shouldn't lose to.
So that's where I want to go next, the lose teams you shouldn't lose to. Because in the pre-conference, LSU did a fair bit of that. I mean, they got an ugly loss against East Tennessee State, which is a good team, but the name on the jersey obviously doesn't look impressive. How much does LSU's some of their pre-conference struggles negatively affect them right now?
Not too terribly much. Their losses are to VCU, who's a solid team and in contention for an at-large. Utah State, who had preseason expectations that are much higher than the Mountain West has seen in a few years. They're kind of hanging around the bubble. It's not too bad of a loss. The East Tennessee State loss, I don't consider that one bad at all. They are also in the discussion for an at-large should they not win their conference tournament. And then USC, that's in L.A., so that was basically a road game, and you lose by 2. I don't think any of those losses are bad losses. Those aren't going to be the kind of thing that drops them a seed line or 2. But I do need to see, and the committee will say the same thing, they need to see more big wins.
You mentioned Auburn. Kentucky lingers as well out there for LSU. What else, as you look at that schedule ahead, it has the potential to be a big or a really good win?
Well, I'm looking at this week. They've got a trap game, I think, coming up on Wednesday because the Auburn game is next Saturday on the road. They may be looking ahead of that playing at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's done. They've got nothing to lose. So why not get a mark on your resume there by beating LSU? And again, if LSU's looking past, that could be a bad loss. You've got at Alabama. That would be a nice win and not a bad loss. Alabama's been playing better of late. At Florida, that would be a big win. At Arkansas, just because those teams metrically are ranked pretty high.
Shelby Mast is our guest on Twitter at BracketWAG, at BracketWag, BracketWag.com, or at USA Today's, the USA Today bracketologist. We got your bracket up here on the screen as well, Shelby. We'll delve into some of the other things here, particularly with the SEC. But Will Wade last week talked about the fact that his team not only has to beat their opponents, but they have to beat the computers. How does LSU right now look to the computers, to the machines?
They look pretty good. The net is the main one that the committee will use, and it factors in a bunch of the other metrics. And they're sitting there at 22 right now. The overall strength of schedule is 15. Those are very impressive numbers, and then nothing about their resume is going to knock them down. Now, they've got some games coming up that could, but at where it sits right now, they're in a really, really nice position. Excuse me. They've got a neutral win over Rhode Island, who's playing very, very well. At Texas, that's okay. At Tennessee, I'd like to see a few more bigger wins. They don't have that marquee win that's really going to grab the attention of the committee, but getting one this weekend sure would do it.
What about the rest of the SEC? You have 5 SEC teams right now in your bracket. Are there any teams in the league that realistically you could see jumping up and getting into the field?
I think Alabama is one. Tennessee, they're both kind of just lingering around there. I don't think they will get in, but they have the type of resume where they could get in. I think A&M, Missouri, Ole Miss, Vandy, and maybe even Georgia are pretty much all done. But Alabama, Arkansas, I think is pretty, I don't want to say solidly in, but they should be feeling pretty good. And then South Carolina, you don't know what you're going to get with that team. They can lose at home to a horrible team or go on the road and win against a really good team. So that's a wild card. A wild card right there because of the unknown factor. You just don't know what you're going to get.
LSU does have a trip to Columbia, South Carolina coming up as well. It's odd to see Kentucky there on the 5 line. What's their ceiling?
Probably about a 3. They've got to win against Michigan State earlier in the year, and there's not a whole lot more meat. And they've got that home loss to Evansville that's really going to stick them come Selection Sunday, I think, because Evansville has not turned out to be what Kentucky had hoped, a contender at least in their own conference. They're sitting at 8-14 against Division I teams. There's nothing about that will excite the committee, and in fact, it was in Kentucky just makes it even worse.
When I look at the ones, Gonzaga, Baylor, Kansas, and San Diego State, if I made you guess right now, when you do your final bracket prediction, which of those 1 seeds do you think are still on that line?
I think Baylor and Kansas. Those are the two that can absorb another loss or two and remain there. San Diego State and Gonzaga, I just don't know if they can. And, of course, that depends on teams on the 2 line and 3 line. If those teams take losses about the same time or just in general down the stretch, then that opens the door back for Gonzaga and San Diego State were they to take a loss. They're both solid teams. If you've seen them play, they're very fun to watch. They're smart basketball teams, and they're good basketball teams. So they have earned the position where they are. But they're in a position also with their conferences. If they lose 1 or 2, then that probably eliminates them from contention for the 1 line.
Last thing for you, when you look at the SEC as a whole, what do you look to as the responsible factor for the step back this year?
I think everything happens in a cycle with these things. You look at the ACC this year; they have, for the past several years, gotten 8 or 9 teams in and have been the number 1 conference. They're going to be lucky to get 4 or 5 in right now. I think they're solidly good with 3, but after that, it's just there's not a whole lot. But next year they're going to reload, and the other teams will be good again. It just happens in cycles. I think the SEC will be fine. Maybe not this year, but in the coming years, they're going to be okay.
He is Shelby Mast. You can follow his stuff. He's on Twitter at BracketWAG, at BracketWag, BracketWag.com. And, of course, part of the USA Today network is their bracketologist. You can go to USA Today Sports and see his latest bracket projection where he's got LSU as a 4 seed in the Midwest. Shelby, we always appreciate a couple of minutes, man. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.